ready.
Right.
We're live.
So just click it and go live, and I'll see whether it's come up.
Okay, we are officially live now.
It takes a couple of seconds to come through, although it's already come through on the phone.
Okay. Oh gosh, why is it looking at me? I can sort that out. There we go. Okay.
Are you alright?
Yeah, fine. 14 people already. And counting. Good. Many people already. This is good. 95, Roger. Doing better than last week, aren't we? Need to plug in a microphone.
We're going to need to make sure it actually works.
Hello everyone. We're just setting up, but we started a little bit early so that we'd definitely be ready for 7.
Are you, which microphone are you going to use?
I've plugged in this kind of USB type one.
Okay.
And we'll hope that that's okay.
How close will it reach?
Got a good reach on it, so I can clip it to paper.
You possibly both need the microphone. You both need a mic.
No.
Not you. There must be, because this is one.
Is that going to work?
Plug 2 in at once. Do they both pick up if you do that? Oh, apparently I can be heard. And so can you, Roger.
Good.
Thank you, Lisa.
Good.
That's all right.
Good.
That's all right then. Good. It's a miracle. And Suki can be heard too. Okay.
Well, look, I will talk to you shortly, alright?
Good morning, everyone, or evening, or afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Mandy has just left the room, but she is very much okay. Thank you for the kind wishes.
Okay.
So I'm not used to reading quite as many comments as this. I'm going to do my best to ask everybody's question.
You won't be able to, but
If
do you
I-
want a notepad?
If I can't, no, I'll use the power of my mind, and if it all goes wrong, then I'll know to do it differently next time. That seems to be...
Well, you could go back over it and copy out the questions, and we
Yeah,
could do a
that's quite-
Q&A next Tuesday.
That's a good idea. Yes, I will definitely do that. So if I miss your question, apologies in advance, and it will get asked at some point. We'll do a Q&A recap. Freya is doing very well. She's in Japan. She's very happy, as I understand it. She's glad to be back.
Actually, we'll do some of the Q&As with Freya, because we can do that on Zoom. So that would be a good thing to do.
The wonders of modern technology.
Yes. The wonders of modern technology. Which
Any
is,
progress on books publishing or new work, Roger?
well, what we're doing here today is allegedly a new work. Yes. Yeah, the book has been a bit delayed, but it's still, we're still going to try and get a near publishing date. And the moving of and restoration of the prototype house is moving very well too. I think we'll have photographs and film footage of work in progress on that, possibly within a week, depending on the weather. But definitely after the 24th, because on the 24th we're going to photograph and film the bees being rehoused. So what I'm doing here is just wetting the paper. The paper is 600 gram watercolour paper, which is very heavy. And as I said last week, the beauty of it is you can wet it without it buckling, which the thinner papers will definitely do. So in the past, when I was doing watercolour paintings, I used to have to stretch the paper, which entailed soaking it for half an hour or so, depending on the thickness, and then using gum strip all round while it dried over a few days. This is quicker and easier. It was always lovely working on really taut stretched paper, but for me this works as well. The project we're working on is the Downs and Braide Association, DBA's forthcoming live album called Holding the Heavens, which at one point might have been called Halcyon. And the mythology of the word associated with the word Halcyon is, for me, very interesting. It was the kingfisher, or the guardian angel of the kingfisher, holding the stormy winter seas tranquil for a period so that the kingfisher could nest on the ocean. And that was one of the origins of the idea of halcyon days. We tend to use it more colloquially to mean good times in the past. So I'm going to be, this is, let's have a look, cobalt teal I think it is, a slightly greenish blue. That's exactly what it is, cobalt teal. And if I was doing this on dry paper, there would be hard lines all over the place. But this way there isn't.
Do you ever use Archer paper, Roger?
Do I ever use
Archer paper?
What's that?
I don't know.
Spell it.
Archer.
Oh yes, 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 yes. Yes, I do. And I have been using it a lot lately. I only have it in pads. But I do use the paper, yeah. We actually use quite a lot of different watercolour papers. Often depends what one can get hold of.
I'm just going to try plugging in a microphone.
Why? Is that microphone after all?
Apparently you can be heard and I can't, so this is just me testing to see if we can now both be heard or if this doesn't work.
Ah, okay. And how will you know?
I'm hoping people will tell me they can't hear. So anyone watching, if you can now hear the questions, which is my voice and Roger's voice, that is what we are going for.
Does that work?
You might need to talk a little bit, Roger.
I am. I'm saying, does that work?
I think this is working. Great.
Okay. We did something like this last week, which was a bit of a shambles. It didn't come out right at all. The product of the work. And there, I'm going to work on that one in a minute. But
somebody's asked about drama cover in Q&A.
what's the drama question?
Well, we're now going back many comments, so I'm actually not sure what that's about. Drama cover. Also, I'm way too loud because I've got the microphone right here.
Drama was a long time ago. It was a lot of fun, but it was a long time ago now. And I can't quite remember when it was. 1980, 1979, in there somewhere. Maybe 81, I don't know. But a good 40 years ago.
Okay, so I've moved the microphone away from me a little bit so that you can turn your volumes up without bursting your eardrums. Hopefully we've got the balance now.
Okay, I'm working on a table like this, and yeah, it is upside down to you, because if I had this vertical, all the paint would drain off. So I'm working on a flat horizontal surface, so the paint will stay in place for a little while, and hopefully that will work. When I do this with these brushes, these artist brushes tend to shed fur, and I have to pick it up before it dries. Should have given myself more space.
We've got you hemmed in the corner, haven't we?
Well, that's true. The Chinese brushes are better at not shedding hair. I have to say, that's true.
Is this the same technique you used for Fly From Here cover?
No. The background to the Fly From Here cover was enamel. It was enamel sprayed onto super wet board. By super wet I mean actually you could pour it off, it was so much. But this is just damp, it's not that wet.
Did you ever think about using marbling again?
Think about it. I think it was of its time. I enjoyed it. I do other things now, so I can't really imagine going back to it, no.
Do you use airbrush?
Occasionally, but really not very much.
Why is your table that small?
It's not a table, actually, it's just a piece of wood on a workbench.
Well, there we go.
I have a very large drawing board, which we'll see, I'll work on another time. So, if I'm working on small areas, I can actually paint standing up, which is good. And I'm trying to make this into a lake in a woodland, a kind of Arcadian scene. as a starting point for what I'm hoping to do. I've got a sketch here, excuse me. This is an old sketch, but I want to get some of that quality into the painting. Am I too close?
No, that's perfect.
Okay. So the sketch is very crisp, done with a very fine pen, and this is clouds of colour.
Adam Ross wants a shout out. What's a shout out? Ah! Is that a shout out? I hope I did it right.
Okay. So if I was going to paint a tree onto here, and I'll just do one, I don't paint the tree. I paint the negative space around it, which is a good discipline that you learn when you're working in watercolour. So
Do you ever use acrylic inks?
no, I haven't. I used to use ink, but I was very dissatisfied with how fugitive it is. It would fade and change colour. It was terrible.
What was the impact of doing Yes albums on your career, Roger?
Doing yes. Well, it was it was very good. The first album I did that really made a big difference to my career was actually before Yes, and that was Osibisa. And the first cover I did for Osibisa was displayed in a West End record store, and they filled the whole window with it. And one of the consequences of that was that I met up with Big O Posters, and they gave me a contract to do posters, and we did sell millions of posters. That was done with David Howells, who was A&R at MCA. He gave me that commission, and he was actually the A&R at Columbia, CBS, which is now Sony, and he was the person I did the first album cover for. So yes, Yes happened, I think, the same year Osibisa came out, so it would have been something like 71. But the first two Yes covers I did didn't have a big splash on the cover. The Fragile one had the Small World, of course, but it had more on the back and on the inside. The Close to the Edge cover had only the logo and the title on the cover, and the painting was inside. So it was Yes made a huge difference to me and my career, but it started gently. It wasn't sort of hugely in your face from the get-go.
Roger, how often do you replace your brushes, and do you ever trim the ends when they get a bit ratty?
No.
Let's carry on forever.
This brush has been in use for at least 20 years.
Oh, wow.
At least. I've never trimmed it. It still works. I still use it. I guess I've never actually consciously sat down or stood up and thrown a brush away. That doesn't mean that some of them have ceased to be very useful. It just means they sit there and hardly ever get used. But I haven't actually thrown them away. I know artists who sign their old brushes and give them away at art fairs and conferences, or sell them, I don't know, whatever. Like drummers do drumsticks, but I haven't done that.
Do you ever decorate instruments?
I was once asked to paint a guitar, and my reaction was no. And then they asked me if I would paint 3 guitars, and my reaction was no. And then they offered me an enormous amount of money, and I thought, well, if they're that keen, I'd better explain why I say no. And the reason I say no is that people who do that kind of thing paint in such a way that the lacquer can be very smooth and it doesn't affect the performance of the guitar, for example. Well, my paint on wood is rough, and that's how I paint. So I would have the surface sanded down, but it wouldn't end up being wonderfully playable. So I thought it made no sense. Having said all that, yes, I have designed some which have been put on by a sort of plastic sheath, and I've painted some. Don't really want to go into that as a business because it's for me it's very unsatisfactory. Of course, a lot of my logos have appeared on bass drums, but I don't paint them on; they get printed on. Okay.
If you had been asked to design a cover for Led Zeppelin back in the day, can you imagine what that would have looked like?
I have imagined what it would look like. I said I have imagined what it might look like. Yeah, I would have loved to have done that. Yeah, I love Led Zeppelin. There's hundreds of bands and types of music I've not worked with and would have loved to have worked with. Oddly enough, Freya and I spent a year working on the Puccini Festival, designing sets and costumes. I did the sets, she did the costumes for his 150th anniversary, and that was brilliant. But we didn't do a cover. I'm still pressing them to do a cover, but we did a very successful opera with them.
Have you ever designed any wallpaper murals?
No, I'm not exactly sure what that would entail either. If it would mean reproducing a painting on a mural, there've been a bunch, but they were not official.
Are you good friends with John Anderson or other band members that you've worked with?
I had periods when I would be good friends with John. It's not been 100% constant. I would say I'm probably relatively good friends with him now. Steve Howe is a very old and dear friend, as is Rick, and I get on very well with Alan. Odd question. Well, maybe not an odd question, but a tricky one.
Well, here's another personal question. Where do you get your hair cut?
Well, not very often recently, as you can tell.
Well, you've got a lot of admirers for your current look, so
I see, right. Well,
we're wanting to know how we get that modelled.
I see. Well, in the days where when I used to have my hair cut on a more regular basis, let's say, there's a guy in Lewis called Adam, and he is a huge fan of sci-fi. So basically, getting my hair cut there is always fun because he always has fantastic stories to tell, ranging from what's amazing in the sci-fi world, music, and some great conspiracy theories.
Love a good conspiracy theory.
Sorry?
I love a good conspiracy theory.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Always entertaining.
Yeah, I ring him up and say, Adam, I need some stories. And while you're at it, I probably ought to get my hair cut.
Did you learn a little bit of painting when you studied at Royal College of Art?
I didn't study painting at the Royal College of Art. I did paint at the Royal College of Art. I did a little, ever such a little painting at Canterbury, but basically I did most of my training at Canterbury in what would have been considered essentially draftsmanship as opposed to painting.
Was the marble effect in earlier paintings yours?
Yes. What do you mean by mine?
I think your invention or your creation.
Well, marbling as a technique is ancient. The way I did it, I guess I would say, was mine. But it isn't. The idea of doing marbling wasn't. No. What I'm doing here is making a woodland pond or lake. So I put the trees in by painting the negative space around them, and what I'm doing here is implying a reflection, because it would be very calm. And the only thing I did to establish that there might be water there was a horizon line. So right now I'm working on the reflection. I guess when I did that marbling, it was kind of by way of an experiment that kind of worked. So I did a few.
A couple of people have asked about asking questions. If you have a question you'd like me to ask Roger, do type a comment and I will see it. If you would prefer that your question got lots of due consideration, just write for Q&A session and then your comment, and we will ask it in the Q&A. Is that a good thing to do?
It doesn't guarantee it will get asked, or
no
that
guarantees.
It will get proper consideration. But
no guarantees of anything here, but yes, I'll try and get to all the comment questions that I can whilst Roger's painting, but
yeah,
I don't want it to get too fast and furious. And on that note, Roger, how do you stop paint going onto your clothes?
Clearly I don't.
This white shirt was specially for filming. I don't think you...
Oh yeah. But it's already got plenty of paint on it. This is from years ago. And many washers haven't touched it, so it looks like it's there for good.
If you're going to paint a COVID-19 landscape, what would you paint?
I don't know, I think I'm just maxed out on COVID-19. I think, yeah, yes.
Do you have a favourite movie, Roger?
A favourite movie?
Yeah.
Excuse me a second. I walked over here hoping to find something that isn't here. Here.
Were you hoping to find your favourite movie?
Well, I love Kurosawa's movies, so Magnificent Seven, Yojimbo, yes. I love those 1960s samurai movies, so yeah, I had a lot of fun with them. What I'm doing here is, because it's vertical, I don't want to flood it with water, but I'm going to just damp it a little. Too much, it's running. I might see if I can stop that.
Did you have a part in the architecture pods that were featured in one of the Yes books that came with an album?
Bloody hell, I can't remember. There was, I did a drawing of some of the architecture for the cover of Steve Howe's first album, Beginnings. So there was a photo of Steve, but the architecture was a drawing.
What album's music is your favourite from the covers you've done?
Difficult one because it changes. It changes all the time.
Do you get much input from the band or the artists when you're working on a cover?
Occasionally. I used to chat a lot to John Wetton and to Steve. We talk. And occasionally with John.
Have you considered adding a watercolour class to your art school?
I would say I've thought about it, but there are people who do it better than me. Freya, actually, she's much better. I won't say no, but yeah, I won't say yes either. I could think about it.
What advice would you give to someone who's still trying to find their way as an artist or illustrator?
Well, interesting and difficult one. Well, actually, maybe not. I do remember Freya being asked when she was 5 or 6 by her uncle, who said, "Oh, I like that, Freya. Are you going to be an artist when you grow up?" And she put her hands on her hip really indignantly and said, "I already am." But then she came up to me and backtracked on that and said, "Maybe not, Dad, because a lot of your friends are artists and they're very famous and they're all broke." And I thought, well, yeah, perceptive. I don't know. Yes, I think one thing I would say, and it sounds so corny, but it is true, you can only paint for yourself. The minute you try and paint for someone else and try and anticipate what they would like, you're in deep, deep trouble. And for that reason, I think working with an art director can be a total nightmare. So I would say, paint for yourself. You are, in fact, the best possible client. And if you're enjoying it, other people will. So I guess that's what I would say. Whoops, it sounds a bit zen, but it's true. So what I've done there, and of course one of the snags with watercolour, like with acrylic really, is that you do something in one corner, then you have to go somewhere else, find something else to do while you wait for it to dry. I have a hairdryer which will do it, but I think I'll just let it go and I'll come back here and look here.
What do you think about modern art, Roger?
Is that a question?
Mm-hmm. That's a question.
I think artists have been sold a pup. I know hundreds of artists who went to art school hoping to learn to paint or draw and have basically been told, that's all bourgeois affectation, put that out of your mind. All that attempt to get skilled and crafts, nothing. You need to concentrate on pure ideas. And it's pathetic and wrong. Besides anything else, though, art schools would be hard pressed to teach traditional skills. The thing is with traditional skills in art, like in music, you know, if you learn to play an instrument, it doesn't confine you to playing classical or rock or anything. It means you can do what you want. And the same is true of classical training in visual arts. If you acquire the skills, it frees you. You can do what you want. And I repeat these things too often probably, but I had a lovely idea from doing kendo, and that is that you train the hand. So in its turn, the hand trains the mind. And I found that really true. The more skill, the more physical skill you acquire, the easier and more fluid the flow of ideas. You can capture them more safely, more securely. And that is a big trick. Having ideas is not the big challenge in art. It's being able to nail them, to grab hold of them and to sort of realise them. So I would say, if you get the choice, go to an art school where they teach proper academic skills, but they are rare, very rare. When Freya went to art school in 2008, when she started looking, there were 3 colleges in Europe that taught really basic academic skills. By the time she had got to go, there was only one left at a part of Lancaster University. And by the time she got there, they effectively cancelled the course at the end of her first year. So it was pretty fraudulent actually, because it's very expensive there. And to not get what they were selling was a shame. It's hard, yeah. You can teach yourself, actually. The trick is read a little, practice a lot. You won't get everything right, but you know, once you've started to get skills, you can relearn some and do it properly if you are doing something wrong. But if you love it, you will find practice easy. If you find you can get good story and distract yourself, you can put in the long hours. Ultimately, though, that's what it takes, quite a few long hours. I'm standing here, looking at this, effectively waiting for it to speak to me, even though I have an idea where it's going. I know what I can do. There's bits I think, oh, right, this will work like this will work like that. And this top corner is beginning to shape up very well for me too.
Do you still practice kendo?
Well, I don't go to the dojo on a regular basis, or any basis actually, except for special occasions. But I do some of the exercises. Yeah, not as much as I did back in the day. Nowhere near. But yeah, I do.
Are you ever worried about injuring your hands or fingers with swords?
Not really. No. I think weirdly, when I was teaching children, basically, I say teaching children, the person who taught the children was the senpai, who's the wife of the sensei. She did the teaching. I was basically a target. And that was really uncomfortable because they were taught to hit hard, but they would miss the target. So that could be painful. No, I never thought my hands were at risk. I did, on a couple of occasions, think I broke toes, certainly badly bruised them. But then you're doing it in bare feet. If you are practicing, you have kote, which are padded gloves in which you hold the shinai. So they're very good at protecting the hand and the wrist for that matter.
Do you ever paint outside?
Do I ever paint outside?
Mm.
I sketch, but I don't paint. I've been staring at this too long. I think I've got to make some movement here. I'm not quite sure. Let me have a look at my sketch.
Do you ever use acrylic retarder?
No, but I do use golden open acrylics, which are retarded at the point of manufacture, so that they work. They take, yeah, they're very nice. You can move them around. You could do a painting and then move the paint around for quite a while. So I do enjoy working with those, yeah.
Oh, apparently you did a logo for Sam Lee Guitars once.
Did I?
Someone's wondering if it got used, but if you don't remember doing the logo, that's a difficult question to answer.
It's an impossible question to answer because I can't remember, but it doesn't mean I didn't. I do remember odd things that did happen. I remember I did an album cover for a band, and I don't know what happened, but I think the record company decided they weren't going to release the album, so I got paid a cancellation fee. And years later, I saw the album out there, so it was ultimately released. I never bothered pursuing it because it just seemed a fraught waste of time. But yeah, I have done things that haven't got used. And they're easiest to forget, I'm afraid.
Do you remember the very first piece you ever created?
Do I remember?
Or what was it?
Sorry, do I remember?
The very first piece you ever created. I don't know if that's professionally or just in life.
Christ, no. I would have been 2 or 3 years old. No. I mean, I don't have to remember. I've got sketchbooks going back to 1962, so I can see at a glance what I was doing in my first and second year at art school. And I have a bunch of paintings that my grandmother kept from when I was a child, so I have some of those. Yeah.
Oh, was the Yes artwork done in acrylic or watercolour?
Well, it's all pretty much done in acrylic now, but back in the time of fragile, close to the edge, Relayer was pretty much acrylic, but it was a mixture of acrylic and sepia drawing ink. No acrylic, or not much. Mostly it was watercolour. The foreground had sepia ink. Tails was mostly watercolour. Yeah, I would say those early ones were mixed media because if I painted in watercolour and something didn't work, I didn't like the process of scrubbing it out. And on the stretched paper, that wasn't a good idea. So what I would do is work in something that would stabilise the paint, and then I could work over it like acrylic. So they would have been large areas watercolour with mixed media.
Is that sap green?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So far, including from last week, I've only used 3 or 4 colours. I've used a yellow, teal, turquoise teal, and sap green. That's pretty much it. But I will get to use more colours. I'm sort of hesitating to do something too dramatic on this, but it might need me to do that.
Do you allow for or anticipate about the framing of your work?
Well, of course, I don't always frame my work. Canvases I tend not to frame. I paint the edges, and sometimes I frame them, sometimes I don't. But watercolours have to be framed because they are incredibly vulnerable to being touched. So, yeah, a watercolour will get framed.
So someone's asking if they can't tune into later streams, where can we see this piece when it's finished? Will we put a photograph up?
Yeah. It'll be a cover for DBA, for Holding the Heavens Live. So it will be an album cover. Unless they don't like it, which I suppose is a possibility.
Other than sketchbooks, have you painted in monochrome or black and white recently, in recent years?
Have I painted in? I draw in monochrome, and I do big elaborate drawings sometimes in monochrome, but it's rare that I'll paint in monochrome. But I have done one recently, and I think the first opportunity to see it will be when Uriah Heep released their 50th anniversary box set, because it's a rethink of The Magician's Birthday, and it will be in that. And that exists as both colour and monochrome. But the colour version is done like it was in the first version, after the painting. The painting was monochrome.
Where did you get the hand embossing device you mark your prints with?
How do I do what?
The hand embossing device you mark your prints with.
With a hand embossing tool.
There's the hand.
It's it works. It's a good thing to use. I'll show you.
Ooh. I'll sort
Have we got
it.
set for good?
We've got a microphone. Whilst you're fetching that, I'll just say yes, the first painting instruction course is now finished, and I believe Roger is planning another one. You planning another painting course, Roger?
Yes, but I think Freya will do one first. So, let's see. I can't put this where... So that is a hand embossing tool. And it's a clunky piece of kit, but it does the job. And this is in this super heavyweight paper, it does it very well. So this is going to be in this corner. Okay, does it show?
Yeah.
If it makes it hard, angle it onto the light, it will show more. So yeah, I like the embossing. I think I would do more. So much for that demonstration.
It's a good demonstration.
Okay, so we're going to do, I'm checking the time, we should finish in a few minutes, but we will do a Q&A, probably on Tuesday, but we'll post it next Friday. And I will work out with Freya how we'll do the Zoom Q&A as well. We're also coming up to I think the bees are going to be rehoused on the 24th of August, so that's imminent, and we'll be filming that. Then we'll be filming the dismantling of it and the moving of it to here. So that's all imminent stuff. I'm hoping that very quickly now I'll make a breakthrough on this painting. So next week we can see it actually looking not abstract, but like a painting of a real scene. So will probably take me spending a few hours of every day just staring at it, which will be good that I'll do it when you're not watching, because I can't imagine anything more boring. But by the time of next week, yes, it'll start clicking into place. Any last questions?
Any last questions? I'll ask you one more. Have you ever considered working digitally, like using an iPad or graphics tablet?
I do a little bit, we play around with stuff in Photoshop and Illustrator, but I'm not really interested in working there. I worked on a very big project once with Michael Kaluta. We were based in San Francisco on and off for a year. We had an apartment there, and the project manager tried very hard to get us to work digitally, and he and I both insisted we were going to work on paper and scan it. And I've repeated this story ad nauseum, but at the end of the day I was carefully packing and boxing up hundreds of sketches, and he said, see, if you'd done what I said, you wouldn't have to deal with all that paper. And I'm thinking, I love all that paper. That's my drawings. So much can be done digitally now, and there are some very good artists who work exclusively that way. You can do things digitally that you can't do by hand. I love doing it by hand. If I was playing guitar, I would love playing guitar, not programming it. Well, programming it as part, but not instead of.
Thank you. Lots of gratitude and thank yous going to you, Roger.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming. And thank you for your patience last time. Last time was a bit of a scramble, a few problems. We had a worry today. We had a power outage that lasted a few hours, but bless them, they got it back in time. I'm never going to say a good thing about BT Openreach, who are in charge of our internet. They are rubbish. They are rubbish, and I have to say it with some reluctance, they also don't tell the truth. So I'm pretty fed up with BT Openreach. But by and large, it's working now. Thank you very much for coming. See you next week.